Have you ever wondered how a typhoon that didn't even seem particularly powerful could end up flooding entire cities, breaking weather records, and leaving thousands of people fighting for survival? It sounds impossible. Normally, when a weaker storm moves over land, it quickly loses strength. But this storm did the exact opposite. Instead of fading away, it became the center of one of the most unusual weather disasters in recent years. Over just a few days, cities across China's Guangxi region, including Fengchenggang, Qinzhou, and Guigang, were overwhelmed by catastrophic flooding. Roads disappeared beneath rushing water, cars floated through streets like toys, shopping districts turned into rivers. In some places, people watched helplessly as floodwaters swallowed entire neighborhoods. The most shocking part, the storm responsible wasn't expected to become this dangerous. Everything began hundreds of miles away over the South China Sea. On the evening of July 3rd, Typhoon MySac, the 10th named typhoon of the season, made its first landfall in Lingshui, on China's island province of Hainan. With winds reaching only force 9 on the Beaufort scale, it wasn't considered an especially intense typhoon. Meteorologists expected it to weaken as it crossed land, just like countless storms before it. But nature had other plans. Instead of dying out, MySac crossed Hainan, entered the Gulf of Tonkin, and continued westward before making a second landfall in Quang Ninh, Vietnam. Soon afterward, during the early hours of the next morning, it pushed back into southern China through Dongxing in Fengchenggang and moved straight into Guangxi. A typhoon making two separate landfalls is already unusual. But what happened next puzzled weather experts even more. Rather than falling apart over land, MySac developed a remarkably clear eye while moving inland, something rarely seen in meteorological history. How could a relatively modest typhoon suddenly produce such extraordinary destruction? The answer lies not in how strong the storm was, but in the path it took. Most typhoons that affect Guangxi arrive from the east after crossing Guangdong province. By the time they reach Guangxi, they've already lost much of their energy and moisture because Guangdong acts like a giant shield, weakening the storm before it can move farther inland. This time, everything was different. Instead of approaching from the east, MySac traveled almost directly from south to north. That route allowed enormous amounts of warm, moisture-filled air from both the South China Sea and the Gulf of Tonkin to flow uninterrupted into Guangxi. Then geography made the situation even worse. Guangxi is surrounded by mountain ranges. As the warm, humid air slammed into those mountains, it was forced upward. Rising air cools rapidly, causing water vapor to condense into massive storm clouds. The result was relentless, torrential rainfall over the same areas for hours. But the atmosphere wasn't finished adding fuel to the disaster. At the same time, the southwest monsoon continuously transported additional moisture from the Indian Ocean. Meanwhile, sea surface temperatures in the Gulf of Tonkin climbed above 31 degrees Celsius, exceptionally warm water that acted like extra fuel for the storm. Imagine trying to put out a campfire while someone keeps pouring gasoline onto it. That's essentially what happened. The numbers that followed were staggering. In Luwi town of Binyang County near Nanning, an astonishing 745.7 millimeters, or nearly 29.4 inches, of rain fell in just 24 hours. That's more rainfall than Beijing typically receives during an entire year, and it shattered Nanning's historical rainfall record. Meanwhile, Qinzhou experienced one of the most intense cloudbursts imaginable. Within a single hour, 186.2 millimeters of rain poured from the sky. To put that into perspective, that's more than 7 inches of rain in only 60 minutes. It wasn't simply heavy rain, it was as if the sky had opened all at once. Yet surprisingly, the rainfall alone wasn't what turned cities into lakes. A second disaster was unfolding underneath the floodwaters. Normally, city drainage systems carry rainwater into nearby rivers, which then flow out toward the sea. But during this storm, river levels rose so dramatically that the entire process reversed. Instead of draining water away, rivers pushed water back into the cities through the very same drainage pipes. Think of it like a crowded subway station, where people are desperately trying to leave while an even larger crowd forces its way inside. Eventually, no one can move. The drainage system simply stops working. At the same time, coastal areas faced another threat. Storm surge pushed seawater inland, blocking rivers from emptying into the ocean. Now cities were trapped from 3 directions. Rain was falling from above, rivers were flooding from inland, and seawater was pushing in from the coast. With nowhere for the water to escape, flooding intensified rapidly. Taohua Island in Fengchenggang was directly affected by seawater surging back onto land. Even modern drainage systems had little chance against three powerful forces acting simultaneously. Then came one of the most frightening moments of the entire disaster. On the morning of July 6, a breach opened in the dam at Lulan Reservoir near Hangzhou in Nanning. According to local accounts, residents received notice around 8 a.m. that water would be released. Less than an hour later, shortly after 9 a.m., the dam failed. A wall of muddy floodwater rushed downstream. Several villages were inundated within minutes. But floodwater wasn't the only danger. Another invisible threat was developing on the hillsides. When dry soil covers a slope, friction between layers helps keep everything in place. After days of relentless rainfall, however, water saturates the ground and dramatically reduces that friction. Suddenly, an entire hillside can collapse without warning. What had been solid earth transforms into a fast-moving river of mud, rocks, and trees. These landslides often strike with almost no time for people below to react. Among all the statistics and rainfall records, one real-life rescue captured the terrifying human reality of the disaster. During the early hours of July 7th in Hangzhou, floodwater filled a family's home almost completely. Water rose to the ceiling, leaving less than 4 inches of air. A family of 3 survived by pressing their faces into that tiny remaining pocket, struggling to breathe while waiting for rescue. It sounds like a scene from a disaster movie. It wasn't. It actually happened. Elsewhere, firefighters in Fangchenggang carried stranded residents one by one onto inflatable rescue boats, navigating streets that had become fast-moving rivers. Many lives were saved through extraordinary rescue efforts. Sadly, not everyone survived. Disasters like this remind us that behind every weather record are real families whose lives can change forever in a matter of minutes. Events like these also offer important lessons. During severe flooding, one of the most dangerous places isn't the street, it's an underground parking garage or basement. These areas can fill with water astonishingly fast, and escape routes may become blocked before people realize the danger. If authorities issue a red weather warning or evacuation order, leaving immediately can save your life. Waiting to see whether conditions improve is a gamble that floodwaters often don't allow people to win, and never assume calm-looking floodwater is safe. Hidden beneath the surface may be open manholes, damaged roads, or powerful currents capable of sweeping a person away. For those living near hills or mountains, another warning sign deserves immediate attention. If you hear a low rumbling sound from a nearby slope, or notice river water suddenly turning muddy with debris, it may signal an approaching landslide or flash flood. The safest response is to move quickly to higher ground along the sides of the valley, not farther down the channel where floodwaters naturally accelerate. Perhaps the most important lesson is bigger than this single storm. A typhoon that wasn't especially powerful still managed to break long-standing weather records because multiple atmospheric and geographic factors aligned at exactly the wrong time. Scientists have also noted that typhoon activity has been unusually active this season, and extreme weather events once considered exceptionally rare are becoming more frequent in many parts of the world. We can't stop typhoons from forming. We can't control where the rain falls, but understanding how these disasters unfold and acting quickly when warnings are issued can make the difference between tragedy and survival. Sometimes, the strongest defense against nature isn't a wall or a dam, it's recognizing the danger before it's too late.